Let's go back in time. Okay, the year is 2021. You were not there. Okay, the year is 2021 and I pick up my first book. I was bad at reading, so I spent 3, 4, 5 months to finish one book somehow. Then I went on the internet for some advice and everybody was reading 20, 40, even 100 books a year. So I thought I should read more. But I was wrong all this while. It took me 2 years to understand this. The pace at which you read a book should be decided by the purpose for which you are reading the book, not by people. Let's dive in. Hola friends, welcome back to your home of ideas. If you're new here, my name is Mayank. I'm a PhD researcher working on nano devices. And in my understanding, there are only two reasons to read a book. One, to gain more information, and one, to change your behavior. Let's understand what do I mean by that. Number one, to gain more information on a given subject area. And keep in mind, I'm calling it information because when you read a book, you're only gaining the information. It transforms into knowledge in your head. And we will go through later. We will talk about how this information transforms into knowledge and what you can do to make sure that this information transforms into good quality knowledge in your head. The second purpose is to change your behavior. This one is a bit trickier to understand and we will talk about it in detail later. But this is something if you can master, you will gain the most out of your books. After all, it's your behavior that stays with you 24/7. But now you might argue with me that, Mayank, all the books contain information. That's true. But not all the information should be treated the same way. Once you will understand these two categories, it will become very natural for you to understand how a book should be read, the pace at which you should read it. It will all come naturally to you. You will not need to force yourself into it. The books that you read to gain more information are the ones where the actual value, the actual outcome comes later. You're reading the book to gain more information and the actual outcome is achieved through the continuous application of that information. I recently read this book called When a Scientist Presents. It talks about how to give a presentation as a researcher, as a scientist. How do you give a presentation about your work? How do you convey your work? It talks about what should be the font size, all the things, how you should put the figures, how you should put your results so that they are conveyed more clearly to both, to the experts in your field and to the people who are non-experts in your field. In these kind of books, no matter how many times you read these books or how long you take to read such a book, the actual outcome from such a book comes from the application, from using the information provided in the book and making presentations. The more you make these presentations, the better they get, not by reading the book. So in these kind of cases, you should read the book as fast as possible, the pace at which you are comfortable to absorb as much information as possible so that you get the information quickly and you start applying it as soon as possible. Another example would be I read this book 2 years ago. I have it here. It's called Factfulness. It talks about the facts of the world, of course, how the world is divided. It talks about all the things, child mortality rate, how wealth is divided in the world. The biggest insight that I got from this book is that we're not divided by countries, not even continents, not even race, gender, ethnicity. The biggest divide that we have is through wealth and education. If you look at houses built by people with same amount of wealth, whether they are in India or in Africa or in Latin America, they look the same. Same goes for rich people. Rich people in India live the same way as rich people in Europe or in US or in any other country. So we're just divided by this wealth and education. All the other boundaries are very arbitrary if you start looking at that. Now you're in the process of reading the book, you're gaining information. But how does this information transforms into knowledge in your head? I imagine books as if it's a one-way communication where you're trying to listen to what the author is trying to tell you. The author is trying to create scenarios, trying to put up some questions to you. And the actual information, transformation into knowledge takes place when you're thinking about the answers, when you're thinking about how you will get out of such a scenario, if such a scenario would be presented in front of you, how you would respond. In this process where you're thinking and figuring out, that is where this information is transforming into knowledge. Without this mental exercise, the information stays as information. And information is free in today's world. So there is no point gaining more information and just memorizing facts. These are readily available. Next, let's talk about the books which are meant for behavioral change. Here, nothing has to be achieved. You're not gaining information and applying it to get to a certain goal or achieve something. No. Everything that you're trying to do is internal. You're trying to self-improve. You're trying to evolve into a better human. And just like anything which requires evolution, it takes time. So you have to give yourself time. Here everything is internal. There is nothing external. You can imagine these books like a compass. A compass cannot take you to the destination. A compass can only direct you in the right direction, but you are the one who has to move. So I can give you an example. I started reading this book called The Daily Stoic in September last year. And the true fact is, even if you read 10, 20 or even 100 books on Stoicism, it will not make you stoic. The actual change comes from within, right? The book is there like a guide. It is there to guide you in the right direction, and the change comes from you moving in that direction. These are the kind of books which are guide to you, and there is no point reading them fast. Even if you read these books really fast, you won't gain anything. Another example of something similar to this would be like this, the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. In this novel, his tweets were transformed into a book, and whenever I'm lost in my life or I'm not able to figure out anything, I would just randomly open this book and start reading anything. So let's say this is page 178. The greatest superpower is the ability to change yourself. I just opened it randomly. So, and then I would read the explanation for this tweet, and then I'll think about it. So this is how I'm reading this book. So every time I'm lost in my life, I just open a random page of this book, and I don't know, it's just a mere coincidence or whatever, I don't know, but I end up getting the right kind of advice out of this book. So this is again meant to change your behavior. Then there is an interesting category. I started reading this book called The Art of Thinking Clearly. Wait, let me grab it. Okay, so I started reading this book called The Art of Thinking Clearly, and this book talks about the different cognitive biases that we have when it comes to decision making. And I thought it is supposed to be an information based book. I would try to absorb the information as quickly as possible, and then I'll start applying it to the real world. But after reading for it for a week or two, I realized the information was so dense. It wasn't meant to be applied on the world just. It was supposed to be applied on your brain. And that's when I realized, oh no, it is also supposed to be change you. It is also supposed to change your behavior about how you see the world. Right? And then I switched my category completely. Then I started reading it really slow. Then I spent 6 months on this book to read it really slowly. Understanding this distinction between different type of books or different purpose for which you're reading the book makes your life so easy, makes the pace at which you should read come naturally to you. Another question that I was asked in my previous video was that, do you feel guilty of not finishing a book? Honestly, I don't feel guilty about it. Even in that video, I explained that I see books as my friend circle, as my peer group. Just like you have friends with whom you go to school or college, you have friends with whom you go to gym, there are friends with whom you go to party. Do you feel guilty that you're not going to the party with your gym buddy? No, right? Similarly, if a new book or a new idea or a new concept intrigues you, it makes you curious about it, start reading that, it's fine. The key here is to take this knowledge, whether gained through reading the whole book or reading it partially, and then applying it, because knowledge itself is not enough. It has to be executed to bring in the real change. And in this video, I have explained how knowledge has to be executed to get to your goals. Have a good one, guys. See you on the next one. You can check it out here.